So one of the things we were looking at is we watched the overall video that Kay shot of our very last pool. And what we found interesting is this video I have up here. I went up and did sort of I played around with it and did some editing. And so what we're looking at is Konoshiki's mini map. And so it's kind of fun to see what happens whenever we get started. So I'll go ahead and start it up. This is also on the community by itself in the Raider community, so we'll be able to grab that. So that's the pull. So Kwapi's going in, pulling. You can see this the little arrow here is Konoshiki. You can see down here the debuffs that are on. So this is the flame. But the key thing is watch the grouping of the range group. And you can also look at the health pool of everybody as you're looking at that. Because Shimai was actually trying to do this while we were talking, and it's hard to do that when they're on both sides of the screen, so I tried to shorten it up to make it easier for the healers to see it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I didn't know you could do that with the
picture in a picture.
Cool.
Yeah, it is.
So that's a very scary thing on the screen right there. I think I posted in the community what that just happened there.
Yeah.
That was the tank running far away from everybody, including the heals.
Yep. And the thing is, for this fight, that's what the tank has to do whenever they get arcane, because otherwise we start wiping out the group.
Right.
And so what has to happen is a healer has to be basically, we had Shardik attack, basically focused on Connie, and he was trying to keep up with her, but sometimes he was getting into the path that she was running in, and it's funny because there's one area, Hemo, where you just got so lucky because Connie was running right to you, and her debuff wore out just like a fraction of a second before she reached you.
That wasn't luck. That was.
You timed it.
Yeah.
But you can see
I
right.
totally didn't see that if that's what happened.
So you can see here we're mostly grouped. I mean, we still see some people bouncing back and forth. Health is doing pretty good as it's grouped up. But what's interesting is as the fight wears on, you'll see what happens to the grouping, and also corresponding what's happening to the overall health.
And there's moments, right? So, like right there, we just regrouped, and we're kind of we're kind of a tight group. But every so often we spread out. Now there's the flames that come, right, that cause us to kind of, I think it's 8 yards. So we'll call it, say, hey, flames, split up a little bit. But what I noticed that I think we're not doing is collapsing back down to a stack.
Yep.
And the next thing that does, it causes the next charge in the suppression field that he plants to be planted outside of where we're intending. So part of the benefit, besides the heals for a tight stack, is that we know where that suppression field's going to go, right? And then we move to the right of that, plant it again, move to the right of that. Now, if we get spread out, someone on the extremes is going to get the field planted to the right of our group.
Yeah, so like right here you can see
we're too spread out there.
A lot of people are spread out. Now this blue here is most likely it's Jacori running for a spot to go stand on it because she has the shield, and Gargantua is the purple, and so he is running as well to grab the one of the balls dropping. But what's interesting is to see this group here. You can see how spread out it is. Like we have Shimai. I think this is. Well, I want to say this the little this is Jocelyn. Yeah. Because the tan is Kwapi. I was coming back in. So this is Jocelyn. The two mages are over here. This is a druid. That's Hemo, the white, and the red is Ranhar. So we have a couple people here in melee range, and then we have so our range is really split up right now. And again, we're pretty far into the fight. We're 2.5 minutes into the fight, and then you still see the splitting continues. We still have this big split. And even though Shimai is supposed to be the stack point.
Yeah. And when you're watching the entire tape too, you can see the field that we're playing, and you can tell that we're getting that, those times when you get the suppression fields down and then suddenly we don't move. I call it, let's just stay put. It's because the suppression field got planted to our right. And then everyone, I think, that's when we start to lose cohesion, because I think folks are just sort of moving to get out of the way, which makes sense, but they're moving away from the stack.
Yeah, and we'll look at the big fight here shortly, but this is where Shimai is standing. I believe this is Dirtage. I think it's Jocelyn, Grid, and Shardik are right here. Both Chikori and Gargantua are over here on the side.
I'm going on walkabout, clearly.
Yeah, and Himo's just taking his stroll. He's like, hey, I'm over here at blue. Unfortunately, Grig got whacked there. Connie's on walkabout. That or she's chasing Emo, one or the other. Now we're starting we're starting to go ahead and see. We still got a big stack point over here. Now notice Grid and Drtage are both dead, so they will stay grouped for the rest of the fight.
And I'm dead.
Yeah, now Hima's down. And this is where Kaneshiki got wiped. And what happened, and we'll show you in the video what happened, how Kaneshiki died. There's not, quite honestly, her dying at that point, there was nothing anybody could have done to keep her alive.
Yeah.
It's a combination of getting hit with the arcane expel magic arcane, and then also getting slowed by the frost orb. And
she essentially got two-shotted, basically.
Yeah, and I know they wouldn't let her move fast enough to get out of the puddle that is created from the splash. So Kaneshki's back up, but you can see we're still really, really spread out still.
Now this is this is probably like your first or second time seeing this right now. I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing it this way, but when we were looking at it before, again, I was tracking the cohesion of the stack and how green everything looked on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a strong correlation to stacking and most people staying healthy. And once you start to see the things are starting to get really loose, you start seeing fewer green bars.
So for me, I think what it felt like is our first cohesion got lost during the first nullification barrier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because it feels like we get spread out when the ads pop out and we kind of run into the middle or do whatever for correct, but it's more when we're done with that phase. I don't think we were good about calling the place to stack after that phase. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing that struck me is when the frost orbs come out.
Mm-hmm.
We seemed inconsistent about where we move, how fast we move.
Yep.
If you listen to the video on that, Joss was even saying, do we even have to move? Because it does a raid-wide damage, but I think it's just a movement debuff close to it. So it may or may not be important that we move.
Yeah, so in other words, it does damage. It's a possibility it does damage no matter where you're standing.
The biggest risk is if you're slowed by the debuff and don't move, is that the shadow comes up pretty soon afterwards, and you won't be able to get to the healer close enough to get sufficient heals to break down your shield.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the risk. There really isn't any other problem with standing there and taking it.
Yeah, and see, so if we are stacked, right? I mean, if we do have a good cohesive stack going, that should take care of the within range of the healer problem.
Yeah.
As well, for when shadow does come up, right? Or at least ideally, again, we have to rotate our cooldowns, but.
Well, it is. I mean, basically, I was looking at the infographics on the actual shadow. The shadow, the spell magic shadow, is actually a metric that Ask Mr. Robot will look at. It'll look at how long the average duration is, and everybody was basically below 20 seconds, with the exception of Jakuri and I think Dirtage were the only two, and like Jakuri's was almost like 50 seconds. And I think it's because she was probably running to go get the absorb on the orbs, and I think that we that we might have lost track of trying to get that expel magic shadow off of her. But everyone else was pretty quick. So, and this is the fight. This is the picture of the fight. I think some people have already seen this one. You can see the little mini map up here. A lot of people still sitting in the back. And what's interesting is as we're running around, I'm gonna pause it every once in a while. So here's a fire to move away. So you see we have some people over here. The rest of the group seems to be right here, and the stack point's here. Obviously we're spreading because of the fire. But the thing is some people just sort of stay put after the fire's done.
Yeah.
And so we're still pretty loose. So we still have some people over here. These are some of someone's mirror images. So these are mirror images. You can see because they're the three triangles here. So someone popped their mirror images. The group is now behind him. So this is just Kay running around. Whee! So the vulnerability stages, this is one of the big problems we had, was with the monk cats, the monk tigers when they're out, is they pull. So we'll see that in a little bit. Right now, we're seem to be doing okay. More people are coming. Kwapi sitting in there, and I notice that for me, whenever I step in when I step into the nullification, the void zones, I'm really taking a huge damage because those anomalies are whacking on me as well. So I'm trying to pop as many shields as I can. So
Yeah,
there's
I'm
the
thinking.
fast.
Yeah, that when you're in there, it'd be a good time for me because oftentimes it seems that you're nearby. At least you're right in front of me almost sometimes. That'd be a good time for me to shift my focus and plant a chain heal on you and anyone else who's kind of running through. Since I'm since my healing profile is more burst heal, that might be a good time for me to shift my focus more specifically to you until you're out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that would work. And then this example here, I'm freezing it. Right here is Shardik. He's coming to heal Konoshiki, but notice how close. Watch how close Konoshiki gets to him. I mean, she still has 1 second to drop the puddles that are there. We also have some people here. So you see the rest of the stack is over here. We have, I think Hemo, this is you, and I think this is probably Jokori. And I can't tell whether or not Jokori is standing in a swirl or not from this angle. But she does still have the shadow word. She still has the expel magic shadow on her. That's why everyone looks like they're in shadow priest form. So again, we're stacking up here. I think this is no. I guess that would probably be the druid again. But we also have someone's way back here. I think it might be Jocelyn. Now here's a fun one. This is Hemo right here.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
That was totally planned. Oh yeah.
That's not me. There's vulnerability. And see, now we're all running here, and this is one thing that I missed is we're all here, and the void zone the suppression zone has disappeared, but we're still killing the anomalies out in the open.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So that's where we're really getting whacked a lot. And like I said, this is another thing that he likes to do is we get the shadow on us, and then almost right away he'll go ahead and he'll throw, the arcane on a tank. But we're stacking up pretty good still. Everyone's still alive. Now we're splitting. So right here is Shemai, and here's all the rest of the ranged. And so what he did is it looks like he came in and he did a suppression zone on somebody who was standing here, and basically most of the group shifted, this direction, but Shemai, it was to your right, so you didn't bother to move at all, and so you have some
Yeah.
people who are still back here, but everyone else is right here.
And so
Yeah,
by the
so
time I
it was,
call, we're
well,
staying
that
put.
was on me, right? So look at
Yeah,
the
it looked like it was on
that
you.
was
Yeah.
on me. I
Mhm.
we were moving to the right, so I
Mhm.
kept going. But I guess I was already to the right of Shemai,
Yeah.
so I didn't
So
go
that's
left.
yeah. So that I think that's part of the dynamic. I mean, so watching this a few times now, I think that's one of the things that we can adjust in what we're doing is that whenever there's a reason to bust up, right, to kind of disperse a little bit, is to try to not disperse that much, right, only as much as we need to, and then collapse back on the stack, and then that should allow us then to avoid having that next suppression up on the other side of us, right, to the right of us, and we can just keep planning them one next to each other as we're intending. So we're hoping that I'm thinking that might help us.
Well, but see, that's an interesting case, right? So I don't know if it's better to go
Mhm.
back where you are, right? Because then, eventually he'll trample us there.
Oh,
Then
I
we
don't
have to
mean
move.
no, I don't mean that you should have. No, I wouldn't have expected anyone to go back through the suppression field to come back to me, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is that when we get the flames that say okay spread out, right, okay, well then we let them, they pop, collapse back in.
Yeah.
If we collapse back in, the trample should end up near me, near near our standing point,
Yeah.
which allows us then to move to the right. So we should. So if we can keep a tight enough stack, a cohesive enough stack, we shouldn't end up in that situation where the suppression zone gets planted to the right of me. People
Oh,
there
yeah.
are shifting right. That's
Right.
so we keep it sort of on us. But you're right. I mean, if it does get planted, I mean that was one of the things I wasn't taking into account. It's like, well, if I had a moment to step back, I wouldn't run back through the field either. I'd keep going right.
And so right now what we have is in this part here we have the split going on. What's interesting here is right here is Grid. She has the shadow on her, and she still has the fire buff on her. And then she realizes she's out of position, so if you watch back here, you'll see her start running towards Shemai for safety. So there she goes. She's starting to run. She gets right to the corner, and then boom, she's dead. Because she just got to right here, and then what happened? What happened with her is she still had the shadow on, and then the fire just burned her down, and then she almost got to safety, but then Dirtage and Shemai, their fire went off, and Grid was within 8 yards, so she also got whacked by that. And so here's where Connie is getting whacked right now. What happened is um, he went ahead. He's casting arcane. There's a frost orb that was cast on one of the closer casters. It might have been on Jacori or Garden too. They were standing in the little swirly, waiting for the orb to drop. And so it drops, and then just basically keep an eye on the little numbers here in the middle. Watch these numbers. So watch for the purple numbers. So you see it right here.
What the heck?
That's from the arcane splash. That's from the expel magic
Oh,
arcane. If you, as a tank, if you can't move fast enough, you're going to get caught up when it drops because it has a certain radius each time it drops. And so the way to think of it is this is just puddles that when we're running, we're just dropping puddles as we're running. These arcane, highly damaging puddles. And so what happened here is because of the frost orb, Connie got two-shotted right here. So she had so she had 88 here, 9,000, then 144 and 152. That's all like in a fraction of a second. So it's just like boom, 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 done.
Now, what I can do a bit differently, if something like that happens, I can try and roll. I am not trying roll during the regular fight because I'm afraid I'll run out of room and I'll definitely have to go into an area where some of you guys are. So I haven't been doing roll. I've been doing the regular drop. But should I see that happen again, I will roll out of the way.
Yeah, and the other thing is it took about 20 seconds to get the res out and then get it accepted. So it would be something along the lines of, I think we need to designate who the first reser is, because I think that what happened there was Gargantua probably thought that our druid was going to do it, and our druid probably thought the warlock was going to do it, and so they eventually Gargantua did the res. But by that time we had lost Hemo and Spite. And so here's the same thing. There's so right here's a tiger from one of the monks. See how it's pulling, because they will taunt ads, and they're not controlled. They're not a controllable pet. So that's a challenge that we have with the monks using their tigers. I know they get a better DPS boost out of it, but the problem is it's just trying to time it so that way we can get them up and down before vulnerability happens.
Right. And we need to pull aggro off them so we can drag them into the suppression fields.
Yeah, and Lotus, you and I, we can switch to rushing Jade Winds. I mean,
we can.
You know,
yeah,
that should work.
Yes, but we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's just another area of where we're, the suppression field disappeared, and we still have a whole bunch still alive. And I'm trying to, I went ahead and pulled them over, but they're still on top of. I think there's no, it's not an ox, so they're on top of somebody else. Might still be a pet.
So you're still. What was the damage you were taking from?
Like this one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the purple is from the puddles. So
you take purple damage no matter what. It's just how much you take.
Yeah, that's how much you take. Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was wondering is when, because it just, maybe it's we don't run with Shardik, as much, or I was just watching your health, Connie, and that's one of the things that pulled me out. Was I was just worried about Tank's health when you guys would go out of range, and that would pull me, and so I may have been cheating. On that side, like when that suppression zone ended up to the right, I think that was on me, and I may have been out there halfway between Shammai and Shardik, cheating towards you, Connie. For when you've got the arcane.
Yeah, and you can see the trail. So see, here's the big radius that it does. So you can see, I think it's like
I totally saw that
radius or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So that's what it. So basically, that's what's getting. That's what the tanks are dropping, and so you have to be away from it. And so, part of it is just us being a little smoother when the tanks are running. But the other part is just we have to have. I noticed a lot of our earlier pools. The challenge we had was melee. Whenever arcane, when you see this. It'll say like Expel Magic Arcane on Connie or Kawapi. The biggest thing is that when you see that, and if he starts if he starts running after somebody, you guys, melee has to stop. Because what he'll do is he'll just follow, like in this case, he'll follow Kanashiki, and what happens is the melee is following him, so you guys get drug right through this nice, pretty, purpley, sparkly stuff. That does a ton of damage. So that's a challenge with that. And what I found is that there is a timing issue with when I can actually taunt Korag, because there are certain times when he's doing things that he's not tauntable. And so I'll spend the taunt, but then I gotta wait 8 seconds for it to go ahead and refresh. And so we have this up there, so you guys can definitely feel free to look and check it out and see what you like or don't like, see if it's useful or not. But it's useful for us because we can sort of see, like, the biggest thing is we have so much spreading going on during the time periods. And yeah, a lot of it's after the nullification. That's the other thing I'm noticing is whenever after he does vulnerability, the group seems to spread out a bit for the ads, and then we sort of clump back together. But then once the ads are dead, we sort of spread back out again. And I think it is the expel fire that I think people just keep spreading out, and then to stop, then to plant their feet and set.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we have, like, here you can see we have some people here. We have other people back here. Shmai's right here.
I'm gonna get mobbed. I recall that a few times during our attempts. That scene that we're looking at right now. It's like, this is bad.
And your poor elemental's trying to charge you all the way over here. Look at that.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed by that.
All the way across the room.
Cool.
And Shmai's like trying to make it back to him. I'm coming back for you.
Now I am trying to be consistent. I'll pay even more attention to it. When we go at this again, about calling the rally. So stack on blue, restock on blue, please. And I know there's some times where I didn't call it, but I did notice when watching, even sometimes I think, and again I've been there too, and I still get there sometimes. Is that we get so fixated on the particular thing that we're doing that the attention blindness is there, right? So what I'm noticing is that as we're learning the fight, sometimes it may be that people are getting fixated on that moment and they're not hearing anything else, right? Except for what they're doing right then. I can, the only thing I can do is to try to be more consistent, right? To keep kind of sounding off, doing the tactical call, regroup on blue. And those of you that are, that are on that stack will have to just remember that, we're regrouping. I mean, the other adjustment I can try to make is if I find myself standing there all by myself and no one is grouping, I can try to go to the nearest group. But I don't know that that's going to help our cohesion very much. But anyways, that's something else I'm kind of playing with too. But Hemo, to your point, I think, that's one of the things that we have to figure out too is the range issue. Because if Connie heads out, or if Quappy has to head out, I mean they have to head out. I mean they're dropping off that. So we had. That's going to be something because it's like, well, how do we figure out the stack cohesion of the stack, but still stay within range so we don't lose the tank when they get out. I don't know if that means moving in closer. As far as the stack point, you don't have to be directly on top of the directly in the center. You just have to, you can be on the edge. But I don't know even if standing on the edge of the ring, given where we're placing it, which is on that inner circle around him, if that's still going to give you enough, bring you close enough or not.
It's mostly when the tank is dropping the arcane charges.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing we could try to do is we can try to be more consistent, we're already going to run to the yellow, but the thing is maybe we make our shot to the yellow and then we turn left or something like that. We always turn left or right, and in that way you can sort of set yourself up.
I have been normally turning left. I mean, well, it depends on which way you're looking. I'm normally turning towards the blue. The only times I've turned the other side has been when you guys were really close to the blue. So you can know that.
Yeah, because if somehow we can work the dynamic to where we're sort of meeting each other halfway, right? So you're not kind of run over the stack, but if you're kind of running in our direction, and if we have someone like if Hemo's kind of focused on keeping you up, he kind of meets you sort of halfway, so that all you have to do is, I guess, if we can make it so that you're in range of the heals and we're out of range of what you're trying to get rid of, that should work.
Well, and the other thing I see here a lot is there's a lot of, I mean, for the melee group, there's an awful lot of chasing going on that I think you guys can probably just sit tight and wait for him to come back because you know he's going to run right back after he does that trample.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
that'd
like the
be
bounding
easier.
on the butcher. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, just treat him like the butcher, so that we just wait for him to come back, and then you guys should be able to stay away from a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
Like here's an example of where Melee just chases after him, and you guys sort of run through a lot of the arcane stuff that
Yeah,
he's dropping.
do that.
So he starts running. And then everyone's sort of catching up to him right here at the yellow. And you'll watch because like when he runs away from Connie, watch all the see what everyone's here, and you can go ahead and watch everyone run back. Ah! It's not all pets. Like pets can chase after him, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you got, like, I think our melee is better served just to stay near the center there and wait for him to come back. So like here's so this one was on me. I was out of position, so instead of trying to get to yellow, I just went off the side back there. Yep, and he's after the ox. So.
And if you've got some kind of a monk ranged attack or something like that, that you could still be throwing that out there at him.
Yeah, real mild one. Yeah.
Yeah, like crackling jade lightning.
Yeah.
And you could do some expelling harm to build up your chi during that period of time too.
Yeah, and a chi wave or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what kind of watching this. That's like, okay, well, we weren't treating it that way, but we could treat it like sort of a brief respite for melee. You can throw some minor, but then do what if there's anything you can do to kind of recharge or get ready for when he comes back, plant yourselves better, or whatever, get a good position. We could use that bound to our advantage, or it's the trample.
So healers, what do you think? Since we were going to do the healing review first.
I mean, just to do just to lay down the baseline. I think the stacking is for the most part working. Again, if you watch it, I've watched this a few times now, and I still see a consistent correlation between if we have a good stack, people are alive, or mostly healthy. It's when things start to pull apart that we start to struggle and we lose people. But where I see some of the challenges are, well, how do we keep cohesiveness in a stack when we're forced to kind of bust apart a little bit, right? Get diffuse, is collapsing consistently so we can control the suppression drops, but then having to work out this ranged issue too to keep the mechanics up.
Well, so I wonder, what was the fight that with the puddles that spawn and you guys get thrown to the four corners? Jinrock.
Yeah.
So I wonder, right? Because on Jinrock, one of us just stayed. In particular, with I think it was Kwapi who was the bigger problem because of the order of the throws.
Mm-hmm.
And it was often me. And obviously, we had to stack on that fight, except actually, at different times in the fight, I wouldn't, because I would have to follow Kwapi, and he would call it every single time, because if somebody didn't, he'd die, and then we'd be done. So I just wonder if we don't want to keep a healer. And maybe that's what we're talking about. Everybody stacks. We spread when we have fire, but then we come back.
You can't keep the same healer on him because you'll run out of raid-wide cooldowns.
Yeah.
Well, so it depends, I guess, on the kind of healer, right?
Well, I think one of the things would be so let's just talk that one out. So let's say we have you chasing them, or kind of basically being there with the tanks. I mean, there's a certain amount of self heals that you'll be able to do, right? Of course, but I'm wondering if if being out there you lose the advantage of backup heals to keep you up, and I don't, so I don't.
Yeah,
I mean, how
I
did
don't
it
know.
feel out there when you were out there?
Well, I mean, I ended up dying, so I guess but I'm not quite sure.
Hmm.
Uh, why? But it also depends. I mean, I'm not sure I'm always going to be healing this fight.
Hmm.
Um,
True. We as soon as we can move you over to DPS, we need to the DPS.
yeah. Uh, I hadn't looked at the logs before. Actually, I was happy to see that at least compared to Ask Mr. Robot, my healing as a whole seems to be okay. Which is good because I don't understand. I don't really know the spec as well. But yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I mean, it's just a question. I mean, I guess we can try the. I mean, I think if we really are much better on the stacking tight, in general, that's going to help. I think we're just going to have to see then what happens to the tanks, particularly when you're dropping arcane charges, right? That's the only time. That's what I'm worried about, basically,
Huh?
is just that with the stack. I think pretty much everything else should be doable. We just need to be more disciplined,
Hmm.
and it'll be
Well,
easier.
yeah, I think so too. I mean, so if we, and I think that's where, if we can have the tank that needs the assistance, is there a way that you can sort of tangentially come towards the group, but not through it, right? So run a tangential angle, bleed off that, bleed that off, but still stay
Mhm.
within range, and then that way, heals can basically we can cover each other, and the person assigned to the tanks can really kind of focus without worry and not run in.
Well,
The other,
we could. I mean, the reason why the tanks are running so deeply into the back of the room is because we're trying to avoid people who are too close to us.
Yeah, and so
And,
melee, right? It's got to be moving around, and you're going to be close.
well, in this case, it's everybody. I mean, it's
Mhm.
melee. There's healer. We have healers running too close. We have
Right. Well,
our people with the shields who are standing in
yes.
the puddles.
So that
So
that would definitely guarantee, mean that we have to be really more cohesive, right? With our stacking, so that we're not sort of in the run zone for you guys, or underfoot, basically. Um, I'm also wondering too, what if we were to I'm wondering how much room there is to maybe move the stack point in a little bit. So we're kind of like, I've been planning it on the outside, that the circle around him. I'm wondering if we can cheat that a little bit and scooch it in to maybe give us the range
Um,
reach that we're looking for.
at first, we didn't have him exactly in the middle. We had him more towards the other side, and then I didn't have to make the turn. But then we started putting him just in the middle, and that we put him in the middle more so you guys would have more room for the suppression zones. But if you
Mhm.
want us to move him off a bit, that it doesn't make a difference to me. I still have to run the same amount. It's just how much across and how much around.
Were you guys doing alternating healers on cooldowns with Shadow?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. As a suggestion, uh, you could mark the healers first of all. Put things above their head. That way, you can anyone who's it's not their turn. You could also take a turn to follow the tank because you can get the shield off of yourself and follow the tank around and help them out as long as the person with the mark above their head who's current is the stack point.
I think Daly was dispelling his. I think is what he said.
yeah, Thalia was on Konoshiki the whole time. So, and that's the other thing. I mean, that's Druid heal. I mean, you also realize Druid healing's a lot of hots. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you do have some direct damaging spells, but if there's burst damage going on, sometimes Druid's gonna have a hard time keeping up.
And who's the one that is a druid spell? It's the golden healing ring, the yellow. Is that a druid one or is that
No,
a priest?
that's chakras. That's holy
Is
priest.
that the sparkly stuff?
Yeah.
That's mine. That's
Okay.
holy. It's honestly, it's not that good.
Oh, it's kind of done. I wish you
helps.
hadn't told me that. It was
Oh,
reassuring.
sorry.
So it was,
Yeah, it looks
This
cool.
doesn't even get one.
Yeah, I mean it's okay, but it's not
Mhm.
terrific. It doesn't heal that much.
The chamois and druid ones are pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was looking at, I thought. I mean, I liked the rain. I didn't realize it was doing quite as much as it did. It was doing more than I thought. So that's.
It heals up to 6 allies for 472 every 1.8 seconds for 30 seconds.
Okay.
So I mean that's just 572.
Mhm.
So even with bonuses and stuff like that, but it's so it's 1,000 or two. I mean it's
I mean, every bit helps. That's helpful for me to know because I mean, there are times up until now where I would go, okay, well that's down, so I can kick back a little bit, recharge the mana, or
no,
throw
I
throw.
don't think it's equivalent.
But it's not. Okay,
Uh,
so that's important to know. That's good. So I'll adjust.
well, I
Um,
mean I don't think it is. It feels like the druid stuff is and the shami stuff is better.
yeah, I know the druid stuff is tends to be pretty good. That one I do. I just assumed that was what I was getting there, or that if it was something else that it was. But no, this is good. I mean, it's excellent to know. I mean, that helps. So thinking of the idea of okay, well, if we had a tank's if we had the rotation of the cooldowns and then someone who's off rotation chasing the tanks, the problem with me is that, well, I'm the one who's also supposed to be planting the rain for the stack point. Um, and I can do that, but that would mean I'm outside the stack point. When my time comes around, I rush back to become the stack point. It feels like more of a ballet than we're ready for.
Yeah, and
How
I
many
would
healers do we have?
I would just say when it comes to that, we're obviously not stacking really great. So I don't think that switching healers as stack points would, help us.
Yeah. I'd
So I
rather
haven't.
yeah.
I'm watching. I haven't actually done the fight for real, and it's actually amazing how much how much difficult it is when you don't have that context. But for what it's worth, I only have one big cooldown, and that's Avenging Wrath, and it just gives me for 30 seconds it gives me just better heals. It's got a 1.5 minute cooldown. But other than that, I don't. And everything good I have is single target healing, which means that I might be a good candidate for chasing tanks around.
That's what we were thinking. we were thinking that pallies would probably be very good on the tanks.
Yeah. And there's not really no good reason for me to try to do raid-wide cooldowns on the raid most of the time because I'm not as good at that. I mean, it's not what I'm.
Well, and as holy, I'm very good at that now. If I'm healing.
Well, if you have enough healers to omit one person from the rotation, then that would work.
Well, and I don't have a good raid-wide rotation cooldown at all. I've just got a buff kind of thing.
You have Light of Dawn, and that's about it, and Holy Radiance, which actually works quite well stack point wise, though.
Yes, and so I do have AoE stuff, but it's not as powerful as my single target in general.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll make my numbers look good, so really I should be arguing for that.
But I mean, and just taking this into account too, in terms of just how we've tended to function and just the dynamics that we seem to have assimilated so far and become a part of our kit and the things that aren't as familiar. We have a history of kind of doing assignments, so that tends to work for us. Putting that together with what we've been talking about, I think it makes sense if we could try, having some folks be the tank healers, especially those that are spec'd and really kind of set up well for that, take on that role. We'll figure out the cooldowns. I mean, part of it too, it just depends on the mix of healers that we have.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, and I also think Yeah, and the mix of DPS, because I thought if we had more than enough healers, I was going to say, wow, Lorison would make a great soaker considering he does this, on a different tune. But I don't think we're going to have enough healers for that.
Yeah, I know what to do on the soaking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was like, but since we're missing some people, we'll fill up heals and then look at DPS. Ranhard, want to keep you on what you were doing. You are our high DPS.
Oh, I was talking, but my mic was muted. Sounds good. Whatever you need.
Okay, so we need to get Amendable in the group.
Are we staying in Hangout, or are we going to Mumble?
I would say we got to go to Mumble because we have
Okay.
2 more people. So unfortunately, yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to...
Chris is telling Grid.
Oh, okay.
so I'd say jump out of this, and I'll stop it, and we'll go over to Mumble. Okay. Thanks everybody.
Sounds good.
Bye.
See you in a bit.